Zaer dances to the beat of a different drum. While other kids his age talk about baseball and cars, he talks about his youth group and of racial unity.
There's not much violence, and we treat each other as equal people, and we don't discourage anybody and encourage them to do better things.
Adeeb is one of many members of the Baha'i faith, a group that combats racism by bringing together diverse groups of people. They're celebrating Race Unity Day with food, fun, and music. However, there is a serious message. These people believe that race relations in America is at a crossroads, especially in the wake of the recent events in Texas and Illinois. Last week in Jasper, Texas, James Byrd was killed after being dragged from a truck. Police are calling it a hate crime. Now in Belleville, Illinois, police are investigating what they believe is a copycat crime. This time, the victim lived.
To be truthful, I'm not shocked. If I have a disease and I don't tend to it, I know that disease will eventually come to do me great harm. Racism is a disease in this country, and if it's not addressed, it will fulfill itself.
A disease called racism, something they hope will one day be cured. Elaine Reyes, WTOC News.
The Baha'i faith started Race Unity Day in 1957. It's celebrated nationwide.
Hello, this is Michael O'Neill, and welcome to this installment of Baha'i Viewpoint. The footage you were just watching was from last year's Race Unity Picnic, which was had at Lake Mare, and which we're going to talk about on this installment. I have in the studio a dear friend of mine, Judy Dineheart of the Unitarian Universalist Church, and friends of ours who have helped to co-sponsor this year the Race Unity Picnic, and we're going to discuss with Judy, among other things, why events like this picnic are important and why their institution decided that they would help. Thank you very much, Judy, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Mike. And first of all, I want to say that we are very pleased at the Unitarian Universalist Church to co-sponsor the Race Unity Picnic with the Baha'i community this year. We decided to do that. Well, there were several reasons. I think the primary reason was that last year, for the first time, several of our church members attended the picnic. And how many years, by the way, has the Baha'i community been sponsoring that?
This community in Savannah, we've been doing it about 5 years, and then sometime we do it in Statesboro.
Okay. Yeah. Well, last year was the first time any of us had attended, and we all came away really feeling great about the event. We felt it was an event of high quality, number one. The food was fantastic. The music was great. There were activities going on. And it just struck us as being really a gentle time for all concerned.
Yes.
There were people of many colors, many shades, all really having a great time together, and we felt that this was the kind of thing that is important for Savannah to have, and we felt that it would be a great thing for us to get involved with. I will tell you, too, that the other reason that we did this year was the Unitarian Universalist Association, of which we are a member congregation, has begun a new anti-racism initiative called the Journey Toward Wholeness, wherein they are inviting member congregations to take up a special collection once a year, and the money that is gathered in that collection will go toward anti-racism work. 2/3 of the money will remain with the congregation for grassroots efforts in the community, and the other third will be sent back to the UUA and be doled out in grant money to agencies and churches around the country that are involved in anti-racism projects. So this year was the first time that we took up that collection. And when we got the money, we really had not had any ideas as to where it would go. So when our Social Concerns Committee met, the first thing we thought about was the picnic. And everybody there said, hey, wouldn't it be a wonderful idea if we could join the Baha'is? And perhaps in time, if we did that, other agencies, other churches might want to do the same thing and really make this a huge event here in Savannah. So that's the background of what happened, and we are delighted to be able to do that this year.
Well, we are certainly grateful, and we echo those sentiments of it ultimately is hope that many entities in the community will come together and help us to provide the kind of medium, the kind of forum where people are genuinely, I'm glad you chose the word gentle, where people are genuinely in an environment they feel is safe, they feel pleasurable. The clip that started the show last year, when the news person did the piece, she said that she wanted to contrast it with the event, with the unfortunate event that happened to the gentleman in Texas. And she did that. And to show that every time the word race comes up, it doesn't have to be bad.
Exactly.
But of course our newspapers and our televisions are inundated daily with these kind of images and these kind of thought paradigms. And so we think that we can do some things to change that.
Well, I think you can also, and I agree with you that more often than not, when we hear the word race in the news, it's an accusation.
Yes.
It's an accusation that one race did something to another. And this is a totally different way of looking at that. And also, I think it's a good idea to have an activity that is around food. Right? Because as you know, and we've learned this together, that to break bread with someone, first of all, is a privilege. But it's also a way of breaking down barriers, being at ease with someone, and really getting to know that person. And this is really how I felt last year at that picnic. It was wonderful.
Yes,
and I hope that it is again this year.
Oh, I'm sure it will. And as well as the Unitarian Universalist Church, there have been several entities that have come forward and would like to help. And I'm very encouraged by that because that's the Baha'is are sponsoring it, but as I've said, this is for everybody. You know, and that's the most important thing that could come out of it is that we're all doing this and we're all enjoying this together.
And it's a positive thing to do. You know, I mean, you can do workshops where you're pointing out problem areas and you're trying to work towards solving those problems, and that's also important.
Yes.
But I think every once in a while it is also good to have something that is just totally positive and says, hey, all we need to do here is just come together, give it a chance, let's get to know each other on a one-to-one basis, let's talk, and maybe we can continue our talks outside of this picnic. You know, that's the kind of thing.
That's exactly it, and that's exactly what will happen this year. We're going to take a short break, and I think when we come back from the break, initially we'll show, this is not original to our Baha'i community here. Okay, this has been done around the country, and the spirit of cooperation is something that we're just a small part of a larger picture. So when we come back from the break, we're going to take a couple of looks at what some Baha'i communities are doing around the country.
Good.
Okay, Judy. We'll be right back after this message.
This is the old Illinois State House where Abraham Lincoln gave his House Divided speech. which foreshadowed the end of slavery in the United States.
This is also where Hand of the Cause of God Louis Gregory spoke in 1922. Later, Louis Gregory wrote to the fledgling community, encouraging them to concentrate their efforts on race unity.
Don't be at all discouraged by small numbers. If a few earnest souls meet and give the message even to the walls, it will have an effect. The influence is tremendous, whether souls know it or not.
43 years later, the first African-American believer moved into Springfield.
This was our first encounter with a Black Baha'i in our community. And I think that the community failed him. We didn't know how to show this love.
Since that experience, Springfield has grown in unity and diversity. Jackie Hampton declared after meeting a Persian family that was shopping in the department store where she works.
I didn't know that these people were Baha'is. And we were talking about a certain design. And I said, well, I don't particularly care too much for that design. And she says, why? I said, because this particular person said, this designer said that she didn't make her designs for Black people. And so they decided that they didn't want it either. And they embraced me and they touched me and the children were nice and everything and they were just smiling. And so the husband gave me his card. And on the back of his card, I can't remember what it said, but it was beautiful. It had all to do with unity of the different races coming together. And I was just dumbfounded.
The Baha'i family bought something and gave Jackie a little card with Baha'i teachings printed on the front and their address on the back.
And so I couldn't get rid of these people out of my mind. So I took the card, took the address on it, and sent them a card, a thank you card, for being nice, just for being nice to me. They didn't treat me different. There are people who had come in there, I'm telling you, don't even want me to touch them or don't want me to wait on them in this particular store that I work at. And they invited me to come to the Baha'i Center. And ever since I came, it was some place where I belong. At the first time I walked into this place, people were very nice. I even got invited to the ballet. I got invited to the ballet. 2 wonderful people invited me.
Springfield Baha'is find every opportunity to demonstrate through deeds and action their commitment to the most vital and challenging issue. Every Wednesday, Baha'is gather at a local soul food restaurant for lunch together. It's a standing date, and different friends attend each week, but they keep it a consistent and systematic effort.
Systematization, I think, has to do with the continual use of race unity as the focus of all of our plans, all of our thoughts.
Recently, the mayor's office invited the Baha'is to participate in a series of race unity discussions. These groups were called study circles.
Fortunately, there are Baha'is scattered in several of the circles, and we are able to input our Baha'i viewpoints to recurring discussions of problems.
About 200 people from various religious and civic organizations in Springfield participated in the study circles. They met in groups of 12 to get to know each other and formulate ideas which would promote race unity in their city and correct some of the injustices. At the end of 6 weeks, all of the circles gathered together at the state capitol building in the House of Representatives. Each group presented their conclusions, which were then passed on to the mayor of Springfield.
And we would be more than happy to show them the Baha'i community so that they could see that people of various races, cultures, classes can get along and live together as brothers and sisters.
Sister Mary Claire was the spokesperson for her study circle.
We're blessed to have a Baha'i group that is very active in the city, and that we should use the programs that they have initiated to bring, to move this work forward now in the city.
Sister Mary Claire was so enthusiastic about working with the Baha'is to bring race unity to Springfield that she developed a plan to work with the Baha'is on a permanent basis.
We definitely want to work with the Baha'is in this city and probably any place else that we come in contact, now that we have discovered how similar our goals are and how much you can help us.
The day after the study circles presented their recommendations, the Baha'is hosted a race unity rally, which was supported by the Catholic Sisters, as well as a number of other religions, state representatives, and speakers from the National Spiritual Assembly and Regional Baha'i Council of the Central States. This June, Springfield will make their event even bigger. Several newspaper and television reporters covered the weekend events, and one Baha'i sent his own video footage of the day to the local cable station, which aired it on several channels. Recently, a number of Baha'i individuals and activities around the country have gained media attention.
The Baha'i faith are hoping their message will be heard. We've been talking to people who stood up because of their sense of fairness and goodness and did the right thing. This is Linda Kaplan-Popoff, who has written a book called The Family Virtues Guide, which gives parents lots of ways to instill values in your children. Parents are always saying, you know, children don't come with a guidebook. This is one.
Maureen Ume is in the Newsplex tonight with a story of hope. Maureen?
Well, Brad, their numbers may not be huge in the upstate, but members of the Baha'i faith are hoping their message will be heard. It's one of unity and peace, and it's part of the basic Baha'i teaching. Today, the group held their annual Race Unity Day festivities at Cleveland Park in Greenville. People of all faiths and from all walks of life were invited to celebrate and embrace diversity. Baha'i members say the goal is to bring attention to the problem with race unity across the country and here in the upstate. They say the only way to do that is to bring people together so they can discover the similarities they share.
Many in Fort Wayne are promoting the 47th anniversary of Race Unity Day, a day to encourage brotherhood and harmony among all races. This year, dozens of Fort Wayne's children presented Calling All Colors, a performance about getting along with all of our neighbors.
Believe in the oneness of humanity, and that this is the pivotal teaching of our faith, the oneness of humanity. Everything else comes after that. The oneness of humanity is it for the Baha'is.
Well, tonight, children and adults from across the Grand Strand come together in Florence to celebrate racial unity. With nervous smiles and choreographed moves, the Conway Baha'i Children's Workshop dances to teach others about prejudice. The dancing is part of a two-day racial unity celebration at the Florence Baha'i Center. Some of the children, as well as some other Florence youth, will be featured tomorrow night in a video titled The Power of Race Unity.
While the NAACP is calling for a national day of mourning, one group right here at home is using the day to promote racial unity.
And with tensions on the rise, people of the Baha'i faith held their annual Racial Unity Day. And as 11 News reporter Mike Tobin shows us, song and dance were used to help bring people together.
The performers were black, white, Indian, and Mexican, but they worked together in a performance of African-American dance, a sign of unity in a world where even the young see racial diversity woven into the fabric of our society.
When will the fathers and the mothers and the leaders and the supporters and the citizens of Dallas declare that Dallas is a prejudice-free zone?
And the people here have recognized a problem. They're doing their part. Work, play, and celebrate together, regardless of the color of their skin. In Dallas, Mike Tobin, 11 News.
Hello, we're back in the studio, and those clips were pretty much just to demonstrate the spirit of unity, and that's the core behind what we're trying to achieve. Right. We're trying to get people to work together on this, and in many places throughout the country, we're having some success.
Great.
But as you well know, Judy, we're doing a few things here. You and I happen to know each other on several levels. One as members of the interracial, interfaith community. Right. And we're doing some things, and we have been doing some things there. Would you care to elaborate on some of the projects?
Sure. Mike and I are actually co-facilitators of the interracial interfaith community, which is a group of diverse people, both racially and theologically, has been meeting now for probably 7 or 8 years. One of the projects that we have recently done, which reminds me of this, of the Race Unity Picnic, is a puppet show that we commissioned Angela Beasley to create for elementary school children. And the purpose of it was to teach children about diversity, to uplift the idea of diversity. And Angela did a wonderful job with this. She took a folk tale of a frog and a snake, you know, 2 animals that are supposed to be enemies, and created original music for this, and wove the tale of how these 2 animals can come to like each other and understand each other. And this, to me, is really what the Race Unity Picnic is all about. When I attend an event like that, I don't expect necessarily people to dance the way I dance, right? Or maybe enjoy exactly the same kinds of foods that I enjoy, or dress exactly like I dress. That's not what it's about.
Right.
It's about getting together with people who are not like I am, and developing an appreciation for who they are, for what they believe. Okay? And that is what is important about an event like that. I think that the word unity does not necessarily mean homogenization.
Right.
It means, to me, you know, coming together as one to work toward a particular goal, but not necessarily becoming exactly like one another.
Oh, exactly.
I mean, you know, how boring.
Yes.
How boring would that be if we were all exactly like each other?
Actually, a catchword within the Baha'i community, or catchphrase, is unity through diversity. And that indicates a different, a level of actually where your difference is good, your difference is appreciated, your difference from me is a gift.
Right.
You know, so that my universe will be expanded. And so when we bring people together in an environment where they don't feel as though they have to conform with anyone else, they just enjoy themselves as they enjoy themselves. It gives what I consider that innate courage comes out of us to say, hey, it's okay to be me. And it's okay for he or she to be who they are.
Right. And that is a different way than we're used to being oftentimes in our other lives, where, you know, we tend to look at each other's differences as being better or worse than mine. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yes.
It's, we
even more so.
We label, we weigh them,
yes.
And I think that's not what it's all about.
No, even I may go a little farther to say we may even look at each of the differences as being threatening.
Oh, exactly.
You see, and so because of that, we begin to insulate ourselves from each other. And in this group that you and I happen to be the proud co-chairs at present, is an opportunity. One thing I've always loved about it is that one of the most important parts of our meetings is that we sit and break bread, as we've said. You know, so you and I know in our core that people getting together and breaking bread and enjoying themselves really does a lot to remove the weight of social issues that are happening at the time. And because if we come together just over the issues, I think most people that have tried this have had some less than positive results.
Exactly. And I think you'll agree with me that even with this group, and it's been pretty much this core folk have been there throughout its, since its inception, it took those people a while to
Yes.
really trust each other
Yeah.
and be able to say things that, you know, might rankle the other person a little bit, feeling free to do that.
Yes.
As one friend would with another.
Yes. 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 That's an excellent point.
And that's what the breaking of bread time after time after time did.
That's why these events are so wonderful. As you know, we've done several events called Can We Talk?
Yes.
Over the years.
Yes.
And we've addressed racism in different ways and social issues in different ways. And one year, it was very much so an inward look
Sensitivity training.
at oneself.
Yes.
Because those of us who are working diligently, I consider many of you great warriors, realize that the first person that we have to teach these lessons to is ourselves. And come to realize that we're all affected.
Right. Well, as you know, the mission statement of the interracial interfaith community is to promote racial healing through education. And that's what it's all about.
That's right.
We need to learn about each other and learn about ourselves.
That's right.
And it's through activities like the Race Unity Picnic that I think that can happen.
Yes.
So, you know, we need to get out there, see how you feel, have a great time, learn about yourself.
Yes. Yes.
Very, very important.
Well, I mean, I want to encourage the friends. Again, you know, Judy, every time I do one of these shows, I realize how quickly time flies. So while we have a minute, I want to encourage the friends to please take the time to come by Lake Mare on June the 13th between 1 and 5. The food
is outstanding.
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 It's
incredible.
Everything's free. Everything's free.
Right.
Just bring a lawn chair. There's nothing heavy going on. There's no motive other than just genuine enjoying yourself and enjoying others. Well, I guess that's a pretty strong pitch.
Absolutely, and I'd like to second it. I expect to see everyone out there this year. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, and we want to once again thank you folks at the Unitarian Universalist, and thank you personally.
Thank you, my
for
friend.
helping me to present it today.
All right, you're welcome.
Well, friends, if you've heard anything, and I'm sure you have, if you've heard anything that you'd like to hear more about, feel free to call the number at the end of the show. It has been my pleasure to do this show today, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
Shouting from the mountaintop, sailing on the breeze. The only way we're gonna have peace is when we come to see we are one family. We are too close not to let it be. We are sisters and brothers, a coat of many colors. We are shouting from the mountaintop, sailing on the breeze. The only way we're gonna have peace is when we come to see we are one family. We are too close not to let it be. We are sisters and brothers, a coat of many colors. We are one.
Hello, I'm Mike O'Neill, and welcome to this installment of Baha'i Viewpoint. Glad that you could be with us on this very special show. Today, I'm sharing the studio with a very good friend of mine and one of my heroes, or heroines, as it is, Miss Lynn Bryant of the Beaufort County Baha'is.
Yes.
And the actual island you live on is
Ladies Island.
Ladies Island. Ladies Island. So this is a show of the Low Country Baha'is. Lynn, thank you for coming.
Okay.
And you're very welcome.
Thanks for inviting me.
Well, Lynn, we're going to discuss a few things today. Just recently, of course, you and I were in, I think it was April, the last of April.
Yes.
We were in Chicago at the National Convention.
Yes.
And a little later in the show, we want to talk about that and talk about leadership in the Baha'i faith and how it's shared by everyone. But first, tell us a little something about yourself. I know that you're a teacher and a mother.
Okay.
And please tell us a little something.
Well, I was born in Michigan, northern Michigan, and moved to South Carolina, actually St. Helena Island, in the early 60s. After my father died, my mother remarried, and we came to that community, and I was raised on St. Helena Island, and that's where I teach school right now. I've been teaching there 20 years, and I have a husband, a stepdaughter, 2 sons, and a 5-year-old grandson.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
And but that's my home, St. Helena Island, and I now live on Ladies Island, which they're side by side, coastal sea islands, just like Georgia. We're all together.
And you're a teacher.
Yes, I'm a teacher.
What level of school?
I teach 4th and 5th grade at St. Helena Elementary School, and I really love that.
Well, good. I wanted to get a shout out for St. Helena since we were here. Lynn, our communities have worked together for a while.
Yeah.
Your community is similar to the community here in Savannah. We're not very large communities, so we take advantage of the fact that we know each other well, and we do events together and things of this nature. As a matter of fact, I want to talk a little bit about a race unity gathering that we had in St. Helena.
Oh, yes.
I think it was Hunting Beach?
Yes, Hunting Island.
Hunting Island. Yes, that was, yes, it's on the screen. It was, what, a couple years ago or last year?
It was last year. This was last summer during June, and it was at Hunting Island State Park, and the ladies pictured there, that's Binta and Gracie. Binta Ostris, she's from Norway. She's a brand new Baha'i in our community. And the lady on the right, who I've known since I was a small child, Mrs. Gracie Reddix from St. Helena Island. We're a small community, but very, very diverse.
Yes.
Very diverse.
Right.
To be so small,
Yes.
which is Baha'i faith. And there's, I see another picture from the picnic. The lady seated with the glasses and the green, that's actually one of my sisters, Felicia Ragland. And then from the Savannah community standing is Mr. Rick Morgan, who I've known since I was a small child. And the young lady sitting down is Terry Jo Ryan. She's a media newspaper writer for Carolina Morning News. Well, that was a lovely day, and we had a nice group that day. But we're always doing things, especially in the cause of racial unity, and that was one of our big events.
Well, yeah, I was there, and it's always interesting, and an interesting part of the faith, of the Baha'i faith, is that the communities are pretty much working from the same script. You know, of course, we have different race unity functions, and we go and share with you guys race unity functions. So people can see that the faith, even though it may be small in the community it's from, you replicate the process in other places. And so
and
something I wanted to...
we always appreciate the support the Savannah community gives us.
Oh, yes.
We always appreciate that. You always come right away, support us, and we love the events that you have. We've enjoyed coming to your Race Unity picnic every year, and the Martin Luther King Ball, and all of these different events are beautiful. We look forward to it.
Oh,
We've
yes,
enjoyed it.
We become like brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
The communities. Actually, I consider the communities like sister communities.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's one of the things I wanted to talk about before we go to a break.
Okay.
One of the things I wanted to talk about is a little later in the show, we're going to talk about the race unity piece even more prominently than we have.
Okay.
Specifically with the events that have happened recently throughout the country. You know, there are times when we're doing the race unity piece that I wonder, do people think it's necessary? Interestingly enough, because oftentimes there's nothing disastrous happening on the surface, nothing overtly disastrous. And then, what do you know? Something happens in the news, there's a shooting somewhere or a bombing somewhere. And then everybody, and oftentimes race is at the core issue. And so then I'm reminded that sticking with the race unity part of our teachings, how important that piece is, because at those times we already have something in place. We already have a history of doing it. For instance, you guys have been doing the race unity pieces. We have been doing the race unity pieces. So we don't have to reinvent things. It's something that we've already talked about. And as I say, when we come back from the break, the other part that I want to discuss is that the reason that you're so very special is that you're the kind of person in your community that has taken leadership, and your community has recognized you by making you a delegate to the National Convention, which is an extreme honor. So when we come back from the break, we'll show some pictures and we'll talk about your experiences
Okay.
at the National Convention.
All right.
Okay?
Sounds good.
We'll be right back after this very important announcement.
If you only had a moment and the world was listening, what would you say about peace? You could say recognizing the oneness of mankind is fundamental to real peace. Racism is loose in the world. It's one of our oldest and most destructive evils. Racism violates the dignity of man and has no place in a peaceful world. True unity requires compassion and loving kindness towards all peoples of the earth. Peace is more than just an end to war. Conflicts just as deadly are raging on hidden battlefields in our hearts and minds. Let's talk peace, real peace, racial, religious, social, economic, personal peace. Peace is possible because it too begins in the heart. A thought for peace from the Baha'i Faith. If you only had a moment and the world was listening, what would you say about peace? You could say achieving full equality between men and women is one of the most important steps to peace. Denying this equality is an injustice and promotes harmful attitudes that are carried from the family to the workplace and ultimately into all other areas of life. But full partnership in society creates the climate where lasting peace can emerge. Peace is more than just an end to war. Conflicts just as deadly are raging on hidden battlefields in our hearts and minds. Let's talk peace, real peace, racial, religious, social, economic, personal peace. Peace is possible because it too begins in the heart. A thought for peace from the Baha'i Faith.
Hello. Lynn, before we went to the break, we were talking about both the Savannah community and the communities around Beaufort have both do several events, and we oftentimes share in it. And I wanted to go into a little more detail about some of the things your community has done, maybe with race or whichever issue you're working.
Okay.
Is there anything in particular that you guys have been?
Well, one thing I was looking back to was a workshop we did on promoting race unity. And it was a a workshop that we made available to the community at large, not just the Baha'i community, because this is a problem for everyone. And we invited, a lot of us invited coworkers from on the job, and we had a seminar about is there really developing a plan of action, dealing with racism, looking at the problem of racism, and determining what each of us can do individually, and developing a plan of action where we can actually do something. You know, we can't say that this is bigger than us.
Right.
That each person can take a step and make a plan of action of what they can do to improve race relationships in their community, because that's where it begins. I mean, it begins on a job,
right,
at school,
in the home.
Yeah, we can't. It's not just on the news. I mean,
right. That's what I was referring to when I said oftentimes people react to it when some disaster has happened. But actually, the seeds of disaster were planted much earlier.
Right. And a lot of people, you don't even realize really what effect racism has on you. And you don't even, a lot of people are not aware of the problem because they have, like you say, they haven't come to face with it until something bad actually occurs. And then, you know, that's usually, it's hard to bandage something up after.
Yeah.
You know, you have a huge wound and you're trying to put hydrogen peroxide on it and it's a huge gash. So, you know. So that was something that we did that was very, very helpful. And we used the Baha'i writings as the foundation because there's so much in our faith on the unity of mankind, because in this day, this is the time for humankind to unite. And that's the only way the world is going to progress. We're at a stage now, the world has gotten smaller because of communications and transportation, everything. We're such a small global society, but we still have a lot of things we need to iron out.
You know, there was some people have asked me when talking about, because we so constantly talk about the race issue or the issue with race unity. See, we're going somewhere with this. It's not, we're not looking to blame or pity pot or anything. We're realizing that it's like making your family more functional, you know, because we're all in this together. So there are certain maladies that we have as a civilization that we have to face so that we're in position to advance as we should. And our faith, we have examples from even when Abdul Baha visited the United States way back in 1911. When, you know, America was in Jim Crow, in the Jim Crow era. Abdul Baha made several overt stands against racism. And even when our community was less than eager to pursue it, you know, due to the fact that it does appear to be a daunting task.
And it was a new area.
That's right. That's right. You know, because the issue of race, the reason I'm interested in what you guys do is so that possibly we could duplicate it here in Savannah. Because as we've realized, it's not as simple as it may sound, dealing with this problem, because it takes tact, wisdom, prayerful guidance, you know, and it's a little more than just getting legislation.
That's what I was thinking about too, is that you can mandate integration of the schools, the workplace, all of this can be mandated, but when it comes to actual day-to-day relationships, you can't mandate the heart. And this is when man really has to turn to God and ask for assistance. And even as the Baha'is meet, or in our workshop that we did for race unity, we had guidelines posted that day for our discussion, and some of them were that we had to be open to other people's opinions, that we have to respect people's differences, but we also have to speak to each other in a kind and loving manner. You want to be frank and open, but you also have to balance that with kindness and compassion and being careful of what you do say, but you want to be truthful.
Yes.
But in a kind heart, and when you really pray for assistance, you can come out with the right outcomes, and everyone putting their pieces in together and trying to work at this. But it's in a frank and loving discussion.
Yes, yes, as you would in your family. When something is going on in the family that's hurting the family, we've come to realize the best thing to do is that we discuss it in a loving manner, but frank, because we understand that it's for the benefit of everyone. So it really doesn't pay to sugarcoat but also it doesn't pay to be careless of anyone's feelings.
Right, because that causes a lot of damage. And what I love about the faith is the consultation process, because you go into it and try and pray to have an open mind. And it's surprising how the decision, when you're consulting, you don't know what the decision will be. And it's not like you're fighting for your idea. You're going in that to discuss and come out to a conclusion that's going to benefit everyone. So you have to put your ideas in, and all the ideas merge together to come up with the best solution. And you have to really, it's different. Instead of trying to fight for your idea, throw it in the pot. Everyone throw their ideas in the pot and arrive at the best, best solution. So it's one thing I enjoy in the faith is the consultation process, and that's dealing with racism or any problem.
Absolutely, absolutely. What I've come to realize, and once I got to face my own ghosts, my own dilemmas, was that what all the prophets do, Baha'u'llah being the last, what the prophets do is they train us to work at a higher level of efficiency for what's appropriate for the time you're living in. And in a time where communication is as important as it is today, you see what technology is doing. And the time that communication is important as it is today, we have to develop protocol and abilities that fit this time, you see. And, you know, some people might not understand what's important about being able to communicate better or consultation or something. But in fact, it's due to the changing conditions of the planet. You know, the better we are at communicating at this point, the more benefit we get from the technological advances we're making.
Well, we have to be able to communicate, or else and work together, or else either we're going to progress or we're going to regress and even be our own destruction if we don't cooperate with each other.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Lynn, we're going to take one short break, and then we'll be back and we'll talk about a few more things.
All right.
Okay, that okay with you?
That's fine.
Okay. We'll be right back after this short announcement.
A young man proclaims the advent of the Promised One. 20,000 of his followers are tortured and killed. The Bab is executed by a firing squad. A young nobleman, famous throughout Persia for his wisdom and goodness, is stripped of all possessions. Baha'u'llah spends the rest of his life in exile and imprisonment. He writes, "We desire but the good of the world and the happiness of the nations, that all nations should become one in faith and all men as brothers. What harm is there in this?" His crime, his claim to be the messenger of God promised by all religions. His mission, to unify humankind. Peoples from every nation have embraced his teachings, creating a new pattern of global community, a model for a peaceful world.
Hello, we're back in the studio with Lynn Bryant, another of the Low Country Baha'is. Lynn, your community bestowed upon you a great honor in April, and I was able to witness that. And that is that you were elected to be the representative from your area, your unit, to the National Convention. which was held in Wilmette, Illinois, at the Baha'i Temple there.
Yes.
And I was very, very, very proud to see you there. And it's another example in our faith that of men and women sharing the role of responsibility. Do you have any impressions of the convention that you'd like to share?
Yeah, boy, do I. National Convention, it's held annually at the National Center, of course you know, in Wilmette, Illinois, at the House of Worship. And this was the first time I was ever elected to serve for my community. There's 168 delegates that were there this year. This is the 90th year that they've held that convention here in the United States. And I was very honored and felt very humble to serve in that capacity. And as I said, it was my first time ever serving in that capacity, and I'm like thinking, why me? Why they pick me? But you soon find out why you have a job to do, and you do it. And it was just an honor, and it was a delight. It was the first time that I'd been to the House of Worship since I was a very small child. And, well, that was some time ago. I'm not going to say how long ago. But it's overwhelming to come to that structure, that edifice, and it's a symbol of what our faith is. The unity of mankind. It's a 9-sided dome, and it represents the unity of mankind, and all of the doors are open to all people of all walks of life. And not only the structure is so overwhelming, but the people that assemble there. When I got to convention, just the humility of these delegates. Though it's an election, we go there for two purposes: to elect our national spiritual assembly for the Baha'is of the United States, but there's also the process that we make recommendations and we consult, make recommendations and suggestions to the incoming National Assembly. And that group that assembles there it's amazing, their humility, because as I said, this is an electoral process, but it's nothing about power.
Right.
It's totally about service. And I was discussing with a coworker that I happened to meet on the plane coming back. It's just a coincidence. She was there at a wedding for the weekend in Chicago. I was there as a delegate, and she said, "Oh well, how do you nominate the different people for the assembly that you're elected?" And I said, "There's no nominations." She's like, "Well, how do you learn of their abilities and what they're gonna do?" And I'm like, through prayer, and then you look at their character, and then you look at the service and work. It's not what you talk, it's what you do. And so she was so amazed. She said, no one gets up and campaigns or says, this is my plan. And I'm like, no, it's not like that. So it's quite amazing. And then the warmth of those people. I never felt so loved in my life. It's wonderful. The humility and I guess the respect for each other and the respect for God and really leading your conscience. But
it really was a wonderful, wonderful experience. I've been to other elections, conventions, but each one is it's more than one can describe.
Yeah, I don't know how to describe it. You can highlight it, but it's just more than one can describe. But one thing that does impress me is the fact that women in this faith are exalted, and as a matter of fact, the writings say that without the full participation of women in all spheres of activity, the earth will not know peace. You recently, and we only have a few minutes, we're at a convention that I just want to brush over and
tell me some of your reflections on that.
It was a women's convention, and very exciting. And one of the workshops that I attended was spiritualization of the home, because women are responsible for children's spiritual and moral education. We have the biggest responsibility because we're the children's first educators. And this workshop was open to everyone, all women, in spiritualizing their home and what are women actually making a plan of action, how they can actually spiritualize their home and take actual concrete steps in spiritualizing their home.
That's wonderful.
And
that's wonderful. My wife, Jonelle, had the opportunity to also go, and she came back, and she was quite fired up, and she thought it was a wonderful conference. And it's interesting how within the faith, our being unity and diversity, we will take groups, distinct groups of human beings, and put them together so that they may learn how to be better contributors to the whole.
Yeah.
Which is a whole different paradigm. And this relates back once again to what we were talking about earlier about training people to consciously raise the bar of civilization. Not just have the herd mentality, but to individually take concrete steps. And another interesting part, and a part that you're somewhat familiar with, is the training of children in these principles. The faith thinks it is of incredible importance that children are taught all of the principles that we've discussed here today, because they'll be better at doing them than us.
Raising a new race of men and women to bring really, I was listening to a song on the way, bringing God's kingdom on earth today. I mean, I was like, because it's all about the children and what we do and recognizing each other's strengths and bringing those strengths together and supporting each other.
That's right. Well, Lynn, believe it or not, 30 minutes is up.
No.
It always flies by. But I want to thank you so much for coming and helping me to do this show, because, my opinion is just my opinion, so it's always good.
Well, I enjoyed coming, Mike.
Okay.
I really enjoyed coming and look to coming again.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining me on this show. It's been very wonderful. If you've heard anything that you would like to hear more about, please feel free to call the number at the end of the show. Until next time, goodbye. I'm Mike O'Neill, and this has been Baha'i Viewpoint. See you next time.